Hi, I'm Steve Keim, and welcome to City Connections. Can you imagine an opportunity? You get on a jet and you go to a place like Portugal, you go to the UK, how about South Korea, how about Edmond, Oklahoma? That's a foreign country. This special guest today was really no special guest to a lot of folks because he's pretty much homegrown, but he's been to over 50 countries with his camera. What an opportunity. Mike Klemme. Mike, welcome to City Connections. Thank you for being with us here today.
Thanks, Steve.
I know you're an Enid product, so that means you were born and raised here, went to school here, and you came back here, right?
I did. All of those things are true.
All of those things are true. And why is that the case? Because if you've traveled and you've got 5 million zillion miles on your flights and stuff like that, and you have an opportunity to go to Costa Rica, but you chose Enid to be home. Why is that the case?
Well, it's where our family is. My wife and I both grew up here. Our parents are still here. Our kids are here. So it's just home.
It doesn't take much thought of or equation to figure out, well, this is where you're supposed to be. I was at a luncheon here recently in Oklahoma City, and the gentleman said, well, Steve, where are you from? Immediately I said, well, I'm from Perry. Even though I've been gone from Perry for 50 years, almost 50 years, well, maybe not that far, 45 years. If you're doing the math, you're figuring that out, 45 years, but it's still home.
Home is home.
And you've been gone for the longest time, and I can certainly relate that, when the family's here and your work is here, so forth.
And we were living in Edmond when we had our children, a couple of them, and we made the decision to move back to Enid because we wanted our kids to grow up in that same atmosphere that we grew up in. Sure. And to be quite honest with you, when we moved back in 1983, that was not available. There was not a lot going on in Enid at that point in time. But over the years, things have gotten better and better and better, and we're really excited now because our grandchildren are going to be able to grow up in a vibrant community like we did.
And that makes all the difference because in Oklahoma and in many other states, in smaller communities, there may not have been that opportunity to stay here. People had to go to Austin or San Diego or New York or whatever, but now things are changing a little bit, and they can go, get some experience, go to school, but they can come home.
Well, that was why I became a golf course photographer. There was no way I was going to be able to make a living in Enid in the 80s doing what I wanted to do. Sure. So I had to find markets for my work in other areas.
Let's talk a little bit, as ladies and gentlemen, as you can see on the screen behind us, some of Mike's work. And I know you've seen it at car dealerships and at hospitals and at the city administration building. Mike's work's pretty much everywhere. So let's go back to the beginning, Mike. How did you get involved? I think, a trip to the Great Salt Plains or something like that kind of kick-started that interest, like, maybe I can do this photography deal. Was that the beginning?
Yeah, it was kind of a hobby thing. I went with some friends of mine. They all had nice Nikon cameras, and I just went along as an observer and had a chance to look through their viewfinders, and it just clicked. Seeing the world through that tube made a whole difference. So I started buying photography equipment. And at that point in time, you had to develop film every time you took a picture. Okay. That was expensive. So in order to pay for my habit that I had grown, I had to learn how to make money at it.
When I was first introduced to you, my wife and I was at a car show in Edmond. This was many years ago, could be 7, 8, 9 years ago. And that's how I was introduced. I had heard of Mike Klemme and the coffee table books, but I really didn't know your connection to Enid at the time. I was familiar with your photos of Oklahoma and a little bit about golf. So I guess there's a niche. And if somebody says, okay, you're a photographer, but do you have a specialty? How would you answer that, Mike?
Well, I used to always say, well, I'm a golf course photographer because that's all I did for 30 years was photograph golf courses all over the world. But since that time, I'm really more of a nature photographer now. We use a lot of our imagery in healthcare settings, doctor's offices, health clinics, and major hospitals.
All right, we'll talk a little bit more about the healthcare setting. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on City Connections. My special guest is Mike Klemme, and Mike, this program really goes around the globe, and so if I repeat your name, this is going to go further than Garfield County, so we're just reminding our audience who this artist, and if you look at the work behind, is that a sunrise or is that a sunset in that picture behind?
That was a sunrise over a frozen lake.
Okay, so I guess it was cold that morning?
It was cold.
But ladies and gentlemen, when you look at the background behind us, you see the golf course, then you see the beach setting, and then that sunrise. Anyway, very, very impressive photography, and we'll talk about all that in just a moment. Mike, I understand that Oak Tree and Edmond and the PGA golf experience back in the 80s, late 80s, it was kind of a special moment for you that kind of tied into this pursuing golf and photography. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, a good friend of mine, Steve Braley, actually was one of my pledge brothers in college, became the general manager of Oak Tree Country Club. And he knew that I was piddling around with photography and nature photography, and he asked me to come photograph the 2 golf courses at the country club. And so I spent a week, 10 days photographing different things all around, and then brought the images to him, and we got in a dark room, and I was showing him a slide presentation of all these pictures I'd taken. Well, I heard the door open, and 2 people walked in the back of the room to watch this presentation. And we finished up and flipped the lights on, and it was Pete Dye, the golf course architect, and the owner of the Landmark Land Company, who owned Oak Tree. And they both were really, and it was just like a 1 in a million thing.
Well, sure.
They were both really impressed with what they saw. Landmark was building golf courses all over the United States, and Pete, of course, was building golf courses all over the world. And both of them started hiring me to photograph their golf courses. So,
wow.
You know, sometimes you just step in it.
Well, what a great story, and who would have thunk it? You know, Pete Dye walks in as you're doing the show.
Yeah, so it goes from 1, and I end up photographing 1,700 golf courses around the world.
Wow, that's a great story. Let's back up a little bit, because I know we'll probably have some OSU fans, and we want to talk a little bit about that because people are watching the program. You know, growing up in Perry, there was a lot of people who went to OSU and a lot of people went to school in Norman. But let's back up a little bit and give the accolades to Oklahoma State. You went to OSU to focus on what? What was the career path at the time?
Well, I had never once ever thought about being anything other than an architect.
Okay.
My dad used to, he had a wood shop, and he used to cut out different shaped wood blocks that I would draw perspective drawings of in the summer. That was my kick. And I wasn't a very good architecture student. I did good at the drawing, I did good at the chemistry and all that stuff, but I could not do higher end mathematics. And at that point in time,
I've heard of higher end mathematics. I can't relate, but
it's like a foreign language to me.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I washed out of architecture school, and I always felt bad about that, but I keep thinking back to those, drawing those blocks, and how much that developed my talent for photography, because it allowed me to learn how to see things from every angle. And that's kind of what it takes, is finding that perfect angle of something where the light's coming in just right and all of that.
And Mike, I think that's an important lesson for all of us to be mindful of, is that we're trying to get from point A to point B, but point B, we may be able to go around to get to point B. Sometimes, and I know in my case, I went to school to run track, and I was going to coach and teach and all this other stuff, and I was just kind of focused on that, but I kind of got sidetracked because all of a sudden broadcasting got on my radar, and I started going this way. So it's important to know and to hear your testimony, if you will, that, yeah, you set out to go this particular direction, but if it doesn't work out, capture that experience in that moment and utilize it something, somewhere else.
And there really is no such thing as failure. It's not how many times you win or lose, it's how many times you get up and go on and keep carrying on.
As I said earlier in the show, that my wife and I was at an old car show in Edmond several summers ago when I was introduced to Mike, and I purchased one of his coffee table books for my mother-in-law and for ourselves, and then years later here we sat, and I was mindful of the fact that you said something about you traveled a great deal taking photos and stuff, and I know in your bio that you've traveled close to 50 different countries and just really around the globe. And one place that you enjoy going to is Costa Rica. Now, I've been to Costa Rica several times, but it's not for photography. It was mission trips. It was to build homes and churches and schools and things of this nature, so it was kind of a work trip. But still, a work trip in Costa Rica is pretty nice.
Yeah.
So why is that special for you when you say Costa Rica in your work?
Well,
Besides the landscaping.
it's a developing golf destination, first of all. And I love the ability to go down there at any time of the year and see different blooming plants and things. And I don't go on mission trips, I'm sorry to say. I go on a mission to sit on the beach. So that kind of folds into the work side of things.
You didn't have to say that on television,
well,
right?
I'm just totally honest here.
Being transparent here.
We love going there. It's like 3 hours from Dallas. It's our time zone. Sure. It's not like going to Hawaii and losing a day and all of that. So it's just a special place for us.
Great. Our special guest today on City Connections is Mike Klemme. As you can see, the artwork or the photography work behind us. And we're going to have more with Mike right after this. Thanks for staying with us. Thank you for staying with us on City Connections. I'm Steve Keim, and I have the privilege of serving as the Director of Public Relations and Marketing, and also the Enid Television Network. My special guest is Mike Klemme, who's been in approximately 50 countries with his camera. And Mike, earlier I said, look at that beach scene in the the golf course, but let's go to that beach scene, and you're telling me that's the Cimarron River?
Yeah,
well,
that's the Cimarron River at Freedom, Oklahoma.
Well, okay.
No beaches anywhere near.
Well, all right. I'm sorry, but it looked like a beach from here. Tell us a little bit about that shot. Is that during the morning, evening, or what?
Early morning. That's about an hour and a half drive from my home, and
you said Freedom,
Freedom.
Because
yes.
I've been out to Freedom. So.
Yeah, I got up that morning about 4 o'clock.
Okay.
And drove out that way, and as I'm going there, it's lightning and thundering and raining like heck, and I'm thinking, what am I doing out here? The day's lost. There's no way I'm going to get a picture. I get to this place, I get him in the area that I need to be to take this photograph. The rain stops, the clouds clear, and boom, there it is. So every once in a while you get lucky.
Yeah. Well, just blame me if I call the Cimarron River a beach setting there, excuse me, in Freedom, Oklahoma. Okay, the picture right in the middle of us. Oh, by the way, Mike, how can people find this photo? I asked you to send me some of your favorites, and here we have 3 favorites behind us. Which coffee table book are they in, or are they in a book, or?
The picture of Freedom is in my book, Celebrating Oklahoma.
Okay.
Actually, so is the picture of the sunrise with the reeds. That's Great Salt Plains. That's in that book. And actually, the one in the center is not in a book, but you can buy it as a print.
Okay. And if you see us not looking directly at you, we've got a monitor that we're looking at. So if we're kind of looking off to the side and you wonder, what are they looking on? That they're looking off to the side. We're looking at the same pictures that you're looking at. So tell us about the golf course picture.
That is a picture of Wade Hampton Golf Club in Cashiers, North Carolina.
Okay.
It's a
Another
really
pretty state. North Carolina, just gorgeous.
Western North Carolina is unbelievable. This is up near the Smoky Mountains. Awesome place. Tom Fazio Golf Course.
Oh, okay. That's another, if you're in the golf world, you recognize Tom Fazio's name. Mike, there was one time I talked to you on the phone and you were preparing some photos for a layout or for some organization, but it happened to be a hospital Why is your work, you touched on it a little bit, but why is your work found along the walls, if you will, in hospital and healthcare settings?
Well, it's been proven through a theory called evidence-based technology that photographs, especially of nature, have a healing effect. It's been scientifically proven, and it's also been proven that it helps people heal faster and helps them move through the hospital quicker.
Interesting.
So we've been working with a number of hospitals around the state to, we go in and interview them. We go through each room and say, okay, well, who's going to be in this room and what is their state of mind going to be and how can we help them on their journey? And really it's just about as important for the employees of the hospitals and healthcare facilities and the families of the patients as it is for the patients themselves.
Well, ever since that conversation we had years ago, when I've been to healthcare settings, I started noticing the artwork or the photography on the walls of some of these facilities, and I made that connection about the healing process. Okay, Mike, you've been around the globe, golf courses, the beaches in Freedom, Oklahoma, okay, the Cimarron River. What makes a successful photographer? 20 words or less.
Cash flow.
Oh yeah, the money aspect of this.
And just being able to photograph what it is that you love.
And that's the niche part, right?
That's the niche part.
Maybe it is the sunrises or the beaches or the golf course or forest or whatever. So
right. And people say, well, you don't, how do you love golf? You don't play golf. Well, I may not play the game. I used to when I was a young kid, but I appreciate so much the design of the golf course, the role of the landscape. It truly is, when I'm doing a photograph of a golf course, it truly is a classic landscape photograph that just happens to have a flagstick in it.
And I want to put Mike on the spot a little bit, because when I do have conversations with Mike and he says, oh, I'm off to take a picture of some golf courses in Korea, South Korea, I always volunteer my services to go along, and he is yet to be accepting of my offer to help carry a bag or anything, because I could do that.
I'm not paying for your airfare.
All right. Mike, I'm aware of the two coffee tables that we have in our family. But I understand that there's more works that you've done. Can you tell us about those?
Well, earlier, the two that you have are actually projects that I self-published.
Okay.
But prior to that, I did a couple of projects for Harry Abrams Company in New York through Golf Magazine. The first was Grand Slam Golf, where I photographed all of the golf courses where they play the Grand Slam events, the U.S. Open, the PGA Championship, the British Open, and the Masters. That was really great fun, getting to go to all of those classic golf courses.
And it's amazing that golf courses, the thing that I enjoy about the golf courses is that they're just so well manicured. They're designed, they just didn't kind of happen. And just gorgeous.
And I like the older ones where it looks like they just laid the plans on the existing landscape because they didn't have the technology to do all the shaping that they do now. Yeah. I love those old golf courses like that. The second project that I did with Abrams was called Golf Resorts of the World. And I traveled to 100 golf resorts in 25 countries around the world for that project in about 2.5 to 3 years.
Wow. How many cameras have you had since that great Salt Plains moment years ago? How many cameras have you gone
Probably
through?
Less than a dozen.
Okay.
I used.
Has that technology helped you out in?
Oh yeah.
Compared to the old way of doing things?
Yeah, it makes it so much easier to share the photography.
Okay.
Before you would have film. Okay, well, how do you share that other than doing it or putting it in a magazine or a calendar, or showing it through a slide projector to a group of people? You had pretty limited ways that you could share it, but now it's...
Now take the picture and look at it.
Yeah.
Say, oh, well, I need to do this. Make that adjustment. Versus wondering if I made it.
You're right. And coming home, being in Portugal,
yes,
coming home and then finding what you actually captured, that was risky business.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us on City Connections today. Mike Klemme is our special guest. And Mike, we need to close the show out, and so I want to give you this opportunity. For those folks in Enid and maybe around the world, they've known a lot about you and your work and stuff, but is there anything you can share with us that would be kind of unique to you or maybe your family that people don't know about that's kind of special? I like to give our special guests an opportunity to kind of share a little jewel about themselves.
Just a simple guy doing what I love to do. I've been blessed to have a family that allows me to do what it is that I love to do. I've got a wife, Suzanne, and 5 great grandchildren, 3 kids.
And I know that you help your dad as much as possible.
Yeah, and
or he helps you.
I get to work with my dad and my son almost every day, and my grandkids on the weekends, and so we're a pretty tight family. We are kind of developing a small part of Enid right now. Over in our little East Maple area, we have one building, and we have an announcement coming up next week about owning some more parts of that area.
Okay.
So
I look forward to hearing that.
So we're trying to help the community in that way.
We need to close the program. Mike, how can people see your work? I'm sure you have a website. How do they get there?
www.mikeklemme.com. The Klemme is spelled Klemme. Come visit, sign up. We send out notifications rarely, but we're not one of those every day, all day long people that bug you. But when we have new and exciting things to talk about, we let people know.
Okay. Mike, thank you so much. Appreciate you being on City Connections.
Appreciate you having me.
You bet. We'll do it again. Once you come back from circling the globe again, we'll get an update on where you've been and what you've done.
Sounds great.
And thank you for joining us on City Connections. Again, appreciate the opportunity, usually weekly, to come into your home and really highlight a special guest with the Enid connection. And thank you for being our special guest with that Enid connection as well. So until next time, make it a great day, and we'll see you then.